So we want to make sure that we're giving a platform and pushing people who are engaged in fighting for common sense, team sanity. So we're going to start a weekly partnership for a while with the Rental Housing Association of Washington, and how they came on our radar is obviously these crazy landlord-tenant things are going on that are just out of control. Absolutely out of control. We have been covering what's happening in Bellevue with a squatter who's been in a house there for like 2 years and they can't get him out, so they're protesting him. And then when we became interested in these issues was through the Jason Roth ordeal. So Jason Roth, young guy, bought a house, fixed it up at a young age in South Seattle, only to get a deadbeat tenant who wouldn't get out of there for a year. And then about a month ago, finally, Jason Roth's ordeal came to an end. King County came in, evicted this guy from his house. And we had Jason Roth on at the time. And I asked him, I said, Jason, what happened? Last time we talked to you, there was no end in sight to this ordeal. And now you're calling us today saying the guy just got evicted. And here's what Jason had to say.
So I joined Rental Housing Association, and that was the big change of all this, where things started looking up. I became a RHA member. I didn't even know they existed until somewhat recently. They helped me find a lawyer that was better suited for my situation. They gave me a lot of good advice. And some of that was sort of like, stay on the down low for a little while until this is over. And the lawyer that they were able to find me, who they recommended, was awesome. And he came up with a settlement that they agreed to. Which is part of the reason the eviction actually happened. It made us so we didn't have to go to court.
Yeah, so Jason was so excited, and he said multiple times in that interview, I just wish I had known about RHA sooner. And he recommended that other small landlords join RHA. I think it's like a $260 yearly fee. And you see how beneficial it was to Jason Roth. So we're going to start a weekly segment on Tuesdays where we're looking into specifically issues related to what's happening with these landlord laws and the tenant protections. But I want to introduce you today to Sean Flynn. So Sean Flynn is the executive director and board president of the Rental Housing Association of Washington. And I wanted him to just help us understand what it is that they're out there trying to do for mom and pop landlords, and why this issue has become such a, I want to call it a culture war issue, but has become something that's getting so much attention. Sean Flynn, welcome to UnDivided.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're excited about this because we've been trying to partner with people who are looking at things through a lens of common sense and sanity and hey, that makes sense and that doesn't. And there are a lot of us out there, including you guys at RHA, and we just need to make sure that people hear what's going on and know how they can push back or take action. So talk a little bit about what the RHA does.
So the Rental Housing Association of Washington, what we do is we advocate and provide services for small independent housing providers, often referred to as landlords, but we like the term housing provider. Because what we fundamentally do is we don't lord over anyone. We provide housing with our hard-earned savings. So our members are typically what is often referred to as the mom and pops. So our typical member owns maybe a single family home or a duplex or maybe 2 single family homes, right? And they're oftentimes that person's retirement or their kid's college education fund is sitting in those homes. So they're hardworking Washingtonians who have decided to use their investment dollars to provide housing as part of their investment plan. And so what RHA is really there to do is to provide the services and resources to allow small mom and pops to stay in the business.
Yeah. Well, we first heard about RHA because I'll just be honest. I mean, gosh, going back maybe 6 months, I wasn't really familiar. I'd maybe heard about Rental Housing Association, but we heard about it, you guys, from Jason Roth. So you'll be familiar with that story, which was one of the first big stories, I think, of this crazy, landscape gone wild for landlord tenants. And, he'd been dealing with for about a year a guy who, I just call it squatting, because when you're not paying rent for that long, I mean, you're just kind of squatting there. And man, I'll tell you, I talked to him so many times, and off the record, on the record, on the show, off the show, and he was just beside himself with what to do. Had exhausted his resources and his knowledge. And then one day, all of a sudden out of the blue, it's fixed. He's like, yeah, the guy got hit and he's out. And he said it was RHA. He said, if I had not joined RHA, I would still be in this mess. Are you hearing from a lot of stories like Jason's?
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. The maze has gotten substantially more complicated for housing providers. And once you find yourself in a tough position, um, it is harder to get out. The eviction timelines continue to get longer and longer. Last I checked, we're a year out from a start to finish on a unlawful detainer in King County. And what we've seen again and again um, is when a small housing provider has a problem and they can't get the tenant out, um, or the cost is really high for if you've broken a rule of some sort. That housing provider at the end of it says, I don't want to do this anymore, and they sell the unit. And those units don't go back into the rental pool. They're purchased by owner occupied, or they become townhomes that become owner occupied or whatever. And what that does is that reduces the total amount of rental housing available, which makes it more expensive, exactly at a point of time where we don't have enough affordable housing to begin with.
So we're going to be talking to you guys every week, and I think now is particularly important to draw attention to these issues and these individual stories, because I do feel like there is momentum. I mean, do you get that sense that this is finally getting to the point of absurdity where now people are going to pay attention to what you guys have been saying?
I mean, we're hoping, yeah, we're hoping that common sense prevails in 2025 in the legislature. We've already seen some of the more liberal jurisdictions of the state move in a more moderate voices, and you see that in the Seattle City Council. It's a more moderate voice than it has been in the past. I know that it's relative, right? Because it was so far left for so long. But yeah, RHA works really hard. We have a robust government relations part of our organization that we try to talk to as many electeds as possible. And we do that through PAC donations and other things. But we're really hoping that reasonable folks can look at these problems and come up with solutions that actually work, rather than dogmatic solutions that we know don't work, but play well to a populist politic at a given moment.
Yeah, well, 100%. And we want to be part of that. And I think also talking about these issues when they're not actively in the news is important. It's like easy to talk about them when the rent control debate's happening in Olympia, or when Jason Roth's like, where am I going to live? But I think making sure that people understand how this plays into the overall housing crisis, the affordability crisis and all of that is so critical. So we're excited to partner with you guys. Sean Flynn, thank you so much. And we'll talk to you again.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me on. I look forward to seeing you again.
Yeah, again, that's Sean Flynn with the Rental Housing Association of Washington. So this is obviously a great partnership for us in the show, but what we hope to do through this, so every week we're going to do a segment. It's not always going to be RHA. We're going to talk to landlords that are dealing with craziness and maybe even tenants and try to figure out, how do we improve this situation? Because it's wild, right? It doesn't make any sense what's happening. You cannot have an environment where someone's allowed to squat in someone's home for a year or 2 years and not pay them any rent. That's theft. We cannot have that. So how can we improve this situation? And then through bringing awareness to the Rental Housing Association, we want landlords to know that this service is available to you, that you don't have to, like Jason Roth, suffer for a year only to find out about them. And then your problem is like fixed virtually overnight. And so if you're a small landlord and you're struggling with what to do, or you're not in this mess yet, and you worry that you could find yourself in that mess, reach out to the RHA, become a member, and make sure that you have someone in your corner navigating this crazy environment while we work to fix it. So rhawa.org, rhawa.org, you can learn more about what they do. So we're going to fix this debacle, and we're going to make sure that there's enough pressure on lawmakers in Olympia that they don't come around next session in 2025 and try again with the rent control that just barely failed this year, because you know that they will. So we need to keep the momentum up on this issue, even when there's not a Jason Roth type story in the news.